When you are building a new PC, you want to make sure that the CPU is good enough for your graphics card. And you also want a CPU that will deliver the performance that you desire in your favorite games. However, buying the wrong CPU will lead to potentially FPS drops or just wasting your money, considering that you could buy a CPU for around the same price and get better gaming performance. So today I will tell you about the 5 CPUs I recommend you avoiding when building a new computer, and I will tell you why you should avoid each CPU and give you a better CPU alternative for around the same price and better performance. Now, the links to the better CPU alternatives will be down below in the video description with the latest prices and availability in your region. My name is Valentino. That being said, let's start. The first CPUs I recommend you avoiding are the i9-14900K and i7-14700K. And this might be a surprise for many people because the i7-14700K and also the i9 processor are some of the fastest CPUs in the entire market for gaming. However, the i7-14700K goes for around $350, which is a very high price considering that you can get the i7-13700K instead, which is going for around $270 by the time of filming. That being said, the 13700K is $70 cheaper and it's going to perform basically the same when it comes to gaming compared to the i7-14700K. So there's no reason to spend $70 more if you want to do gaming. As for the 14900K, even though this one is also one of the fastest CPUs for gaming in the market, i9 CPUs are not meant for just gaming. So if you're a gamer, there's literally no difference between the i9-14900K and i7-14700K or 13700K. So you would be spending way more money, not only for the CPU, but also for the CPU cooler. It is way less power efficient and it requires a ton of cooling compared to the i7-13700K, for example. I would only recommend you i9 processors if you are a professional content creator or you have to do some productivity work, but you earn money through this job and you need a very powerful CPU for your type of workloads. But for gaming, there's no reason why you should get the 14900K, especially with the stability issues that Intel has had in the past few months. By the way, Intel said that this issue was fixed already, but it's up to you whether you want to trust Intel's word or not. The reason why these CPUs are at my number 5 is because even though if you get these CPUs eventually, you will be getting some of the best CPUs for gaming in the market anyway, really fast performance in high CPU demanding games, and you can pair these CPUs with really high-end GPUs like the RTX 4090. So even though for the price I do not recommend them, you will be happy with the level of performance, and that's for sure. The next CPU I wouldn't recommend you buying is the Ryzen 7 5800X. This CPU from the AM4 platform is actually really expensive, going for $170, and it's going to give you a good level of gaming performance. However, considering that you can get a Ryzen 5 7600 for around $20 more, it doesn't make sense to go with the 5800X for gaming. The Ryzen 5 7600 is quite faster for gaming on average, is also way more power efficient, requires less cooling, and you get more upgradability over time because you are on the AM5 platform, so you can upgrade up to faster CPUs if you are on this platform instead of being on the AM4 platform, which is the platform that supports the Ryzen 7 5800X. Or you could also go for a Ryzen 5 7500F, which is very similar in terms of gaming performance compared to the Ryzen 5 7600, so it's still faster than the 5800X, and it's about $50 cheaper, going for $120, and you are also on the AM5 platform with the 7500F, so it's more upgradable over time. Just keep in mind that if you go for the 7500F, you can only find this CPU through AliExpress, so you are buying from China. But if you're okay with that, you are going to be saving money and you are getting a much better CPU compared to the 5800X. Now, let's say you are already on the AM4 platform and you have a CPU like the Ryzen 5 3600 and you want to upgrade, but you do not want to change the platform because that's going to be more expensive for you, then I recommend you considering the Ryzen 7 5700X, which is just about $10 cheaper. So it's not much cheaper, but it's going to give you about the same level of gaming performance, more power efficient, so you are going to be saving money anyway on your electricity bill, and it requires less cooling. The next CPU I would recommend you avoiding for gaming, especially if you're working with a tight budget, is the i3 14100. This CPU is going for $127, so it's more expensive than the Ryzen 5 7500F, and it is much slower when it comes to gaming performance. performance. But don't get me wrong, if you are looking for a more budget-oriented CPU, the i3-14100F will deliver solid gaming performance, but it's hard to justify when you can get a 7500F for the same price. Or if you want to go with Intel, you can get the i5-12400F for about the same price as the 14100. And by the way, the i5-12400F has more cores and is faster for gaming as well. And on top of that, you can pair it with higher end graphics cards in the market. So if you don't want to go with a 7500F, whether it's because you have to buy from China, or maybe you don't want to go with the AM5 platform because DDR5 memory is still more expensive than DDR4, then go with the i5-12400F, which is going for less than the i3-14100 and is much better if you are working with a tight budget. And if you have less money to spend, then go with the i3-13100F, which provides basically the same level of gaming performance and is going for around $80, so it is much cheaper than the 14100. So whatever you want to do, just don't get the 14100 for gaming. You can get the 14100F if you want. That one is going for $90 and it's basically the same processor for gaming with no integrated graphics. But in that case, I would either recommend you the 13100F, which is $10 cheaper, or spending the extra $20 and go with the 12400F or Ryzen 5 7500F if you are willing to buy from AliExpress. Now, before I show you the top 3 CPUs, I want to say that if you are finding valuable information so far, subscribe and hit the bell icon. That way you get notified when I upload new content and you get to learn more about computers. The next CPUs I would recommend you avoiding for gaming are the Ryzen 5 9600X and Ryzen 7 9700X. Both of these CPUs are great for gaming, but their pricing is really terrible. And we all know that the AMD 9000 series has been a disappointment so far. Let's hope the Ryzen 7 9800X 3D is going to change things. But anyway, the 9600X is going for $250 and the 9700X is going for $327 USD. The issue that I have with these CPUs is that they offer very little gaming performance improvement over the 7000 series. And for you to see the difference, well, in a test with the RTX 4090 at 1080p resolution, so this is best case scenario by the way, the Ryzen 7 9700X, which is the fastest CPU here, provides only about 5% faster performance on average compared to the Ryzen 5 7600. So again, this is best case scenario. And by the way, the Ryzen 5 7600 goes for $120 cheaper than the Ryzen 7 9700X, or you can easily go with the 7500F, which is very similar anyway, and it's going to cost you $200 less than the 9700X. And this is really bad because for gaming, for the most part, the graphics card is going to be the main factor for your FPS. So if you want higher performance, you should be aiming for a better graphics card and a CPU that will not bottleneck it. That being said, let's say you have around $1,400 to spend on a complete gaming PC. Well, you can go for a Ryzen 7 9700X and the RTX 4070 Super graphics card, which is very good for 1440p resolution. Or you can go for a Ryzen 5 7600, which is slightly slower, and go for the RTX 4070 Ti Super, which is quite faster than the 4070 Super for gaming, and it has 16 gigs of VRAM, so it's more future-proof than the 4070 Super. Remember, both of these PCs are about the same price, but the one with the 4070 Ti Super will provide about 13% faster performance on average for gaming at 1440p, so this is not an unrealistic scenario, while going for the 4070 Super and a Ryzen 7 9700X will provide slower performance. And here, of course, I'm talking about gaming performance because that's the main topic of this video, so I'm not talking about video editing softwares or productivity work applications. And keep in mind that on pre-built PCs, my recommendation might be different because that depends on the specific pre-built PC. So if you see a pre-built PC with the 9700X, it doesn't mean that it's bad in terms of price or performance. In fact, some of the best pre-built PCs in terms of value have a Ryzen 5 9600X or a Ryzen 7 9700X. And with the worst CPUs that you can buy for gaming right now, in my opinion, are the Ryzen 8000 series. Whether it's a Ryzen 5 8600G or 8700G or a Ryzen 5 8400F or Ryzen 7 8700F, I wouldn't recommend you buying any 8000 series CPU if you are going to pair this CPU with a discrete GPU, meaning that if you want, for example, the RTX 4070 and you are building a new computer, you do not want to put any Ryzen 8000 series CPU alongside this GPU. Basically, these CPUs have terrible prices and they are way slower than the Ryzen 7000 series CPUs. So a CPU like the Ryzen 5 7600 or Ryzen 7 7700 or even the 7500F, which is the cheapest one, is going to destroy a CPU like the Ryzen 5 8400F. In fact, the 7500F is going to be around 20% faster on average compared to the 8400F because of that L3 cache. And the price for a CPU like the Ryzen 5 8400F is about $140, so that's $20 more expensive than the 7500F. So it doesn't make sense to go with any 8000 series CPU. Once again, if you are going to buy a discrete graphics card. If you want to buy a CPU with integrated graphics, then the Ryzen 5 8600G or Ryzen 7 8700G, then it might make sense depending on your situation. But again, for discrete GPUs, please do not buy any of these CPUs. They will not give you good performance for the price. And there are many more CPUs I would recommend you avoiding for gaming, like a Ryzen 3 4100 or the i5 13500, but I decided to talk about the popular choices in this video because I'm pretty sure many people have considered these CPUs when buying a new system, so I had to make a video about it. That way you can save your time and money. And as I said before, and I showed you an example, getting a faster graphics card and a CPU that will not bottleneck it will give you the best price to performance experience if you want the highest FPS possible for the lowest price. So if you want the best gaming performance with no bottlenecks, I recommend you watching my video on the best CPU and GPU combos in terms of price to performance with no bottlenecks. You will find that video in the top right corner of the screen, and let me know which CPU you recommend avoiding when building a new system. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.